So today I wanted to make this video just to kind of remember what it was like, so I can go back and look on it. But basically this is the video of leading up to her birth. I found out I was pregnant the day after my husband's dad's birthday. We were having a barbecue here at our house for him. And then the next day I went to work, and when I was at work I was having like when I would stand up I would get like these sharp shooting pains like on the sides of my front, kind of like where your ovaries would be, or like if I'd cough or something I'd get like a shooting pain. And then my breasts were like super sore, like more sore than when I get my period. And my period was supposed to come, like I'm like kind of irregular, like sometimes I'll be a week late or like 4 days late or 2 days early. It's always different. So if I was going to be 30 days from my last period, I was going to start in like 4 or 5 days. And so when I went home, I decided to take a pregnancy test just to be sure. I wasn't expecting it to be positive, but I peed in a cup, and I used one of those little cheap tests, and I put it in there, and I put it down to wait the 3 minutes or whatever, and then I kind of just glanced at it and I saw it was positive, and I was like, what the heck? I was like, no. I was like, it's not positive. So then I got a first response, and I put that in the cup of pee that I had peed in, and right away, as soon as the pee was like going through the little window, like both lines appeared right away. And so I wasn't expecting it to be positive, but I knew there was a chance. So my husband and I, we got married in October of 2019, so it was October 19th, 2019, and we kind of decided that we were going to wait about a year before we had kids. But then when it was like around May, we were talking about it, and we're kind of like, well, whatever happens, happens. And so we weren't preventing anymore. But in May, it was a very stressful month, so like I didn't even get a period in May, I think because of the stress. And then I got a period in June, and then that's when we're like, whenever it happens, it happens. And so we weren't preventing it, so I knew I could be pregnant, but I wasn't expecting to be pregnant. But yeah, so then I got some stuff to surprise my husband, and we were both excited. I was scared, nervous, happy, excited, all of the above. And then in November, we found out that we were having a baby girl, and here's a little clip of that.
Whenever you guys are ready, you guys count down together.
You guys count. 5.
Okay.
No, from 10. Oh. 10. Can we all do it together? Yeah. Okay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
In the air.
0.
And so my pregnancy went pretty well. I had a lot of morning sickness. Started like in week 7 all the way till week 17. I was nauseous every single day, and probably from like week 7 to week maybe 15 I was throwing up at least once every single day. And then the rest of my pregnancy went pretty smooth. And then I remember on Easter, I thought that's when she was gonna come. We actually went to the park for the day, had a barbecue with some family, and then my husband and his parents wanted to go to the casino after, and so I decided that I would go for a little bit with them. And while we were there, I started having a lot of contractions. So I've had Braxton Hicks before, but this was these were a little more painful, but they weren't consistent. I'd have like one, then like 3 minutes later I'd have another one, and then 15 minutes later I have one. So that was going on from like 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. and then from like 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. I was getting them every 10 minutes, exactly every 10 minutes, but they weren't getting any stronger. They were exactly the same. And so then I told my husband, like, I wanted to go home just in case. Baby girls are right here. You sleepy? Our bags weren't packed all the way, so I was like, I need to make sure that those bags are packed. So we went home, I took a shower, I laid down, and then they stopped. And so I was like, okay, I have a doctor's appointment. It was like the day after or 2 days after. I went to the doctor, and they checked me, and I was like 2 centimeters dilated at that time. And my baby's due date was supposed to be April 28th. So then on the next day, probably for about 2 hours, I was having those contractions again. Then they stopped, and then I wasn't getting them again. I was getting more of like the Braxton Hicks. Let's see. And then the Wednesday before she was born, so she was actually born on April 24th, 2021 at 7:24 in the morning. So it was Wednesday before she was born. I started having a lot of contractions and like period type cramps, like the whole night before that Wednesday I was having those cramps. And that was the day I lost my mucus plug. And so I was like, well, I don't know if it's coming now, I don't know if it's coming later. Almost. I don't know if it's coming now, I don't know if it's coming later, if she's coming now or coming later. So I decided, on Wednesdays I usually go to my dad's house to see my siblings and my dad. But that Wednesday, since I was having the cramping, I decided that I would not go and stay home just in case. But then maybe, I want to say in the evening, I started feeling better. But I stayed home that day. So then the next day I decided to go see my dad and my siblings. And we went to dinner. I was fine, wasn't having any contractions, wasn't having like really any Braxton Hicks that day. And that was Thursday. And I ended up staying later than I normally do. I usually leave around like 7 or 8. That day I actually left closer to like 9:30. Went home, was feeling fine. Friday morning, my husband asked if he can go golfing, and I was like, yeah, just keep your phone on you just in case. And he left. You're okay, baby girl. No? Shh, 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 shh. Come here. You want to be in the video? Here you go, baby girl. So I told him to keep his phone on him just in case. And I was watching some show, and I was laying in the bed, and I felt warmness. And I'm like, I know I didn't pee. I was like, but something's coming out of me. So I got up, and I went into the restroom, and my underwear were all wet. And then I peed, and then like more liquid just kept coming out. So then I called my husband. You tired? I called my husband. Oh. Shh, 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 shh. I called my husband, and I told him that I think my water broke, that he needed to come back. And so he came. I took a shower. I wasn't having frequent contractions. After my water broke, I think I was having them like every 15 minutes, but they weren't painful at all. They were like, on a scale of 0 to 10, they were probably like a 2. They felt kind of like period cramps. So then my husband came home. My husband came home, and I asked him if he wanted to take a shower, and he's like, do I have time? I was like, yeah, I feel fine. So he took a shower. Our bags were all packed, ready to go, and then we were off to the hospital. So my water broke around 11:30, and we got to the hospital, I want to say around 1 or 1:30. I think it was 1. And we checked in, and then they had us wait so they can triage us. So around 2 o'clock they took us in to triage me to see if it was really my water that broke and see what was going on. So they checked me, and my water did break, and I was at 4 centimeters, but I wasn't having consistent contractions. Sometimes they were like 2 minutes apart, and then they'd start spacing out, and then they'd get close together again, and then they'd start spacing out. So they decided that they were going to start me on Pitocin. So we started Pitocin around 4 p.m. And then every hour they increase it. And so around 6, she asked me what I wanted to do for pain management. And I was like, well, I still feel fine now. I was like, but if it gets bad, then like, yeah, I want an epidural or something. And so she's like, okay, let me page anesthesia, because sometimes it takes a little while for them to come by. And so I was like, okay, yeah, page them. And so she paged them, and she's like, okay, they're in the operating room. It's probably going to be a little while. Okay, that's fine. And then they changed their shifts, and my pain started getting worse and worse. And then they kept going up and up on the Pitocin. And I don't know what it was at, but finally it was coming to a point where I couldn't take the pain anymore. And so the nurse went down on my Pitocin, and she said that we can wait until I got the epidural to go back up. And I said, okay. And so actually, before I got my epidural, it was around 6 p.m. This little one, she wouldn't stay on the monitor, so they couldn't monitor her heart rate. And so they decided to put one of those little probes in her head to monitor her heart rate. And so they did that around 6 p.m. And when they did that, the doctor said that I was still at 4 centimeters. And so then at around 10 something, anesthesia came in. I got my epidural, and I was golden after that. When they did the epidural, I mean, when they numbed it, it hurt a little, like it was like a little sting, but it was nothing compared to the pain that I was feeling before. Then once my epidural was in, it felt like my legs, like when your legs fall asleep and they're trying to wake up and they have all those pins and needles, that's what it felt like. And even though it was a little uncomfortable, it was way better than it was without it. So 6 p.m. was the last time they checked me. We went all night. We went all night, and they were just monitoring my blood pressure and monitoring the baby's heart rate. And then they didn't check me again till 7 in the morning. So I went from 6 p.m. to 7 in the morning without them checking me. They said they didn't check me because since my water was broken, it was higher risk for infection. But it was about 3 o'clock in the morning when I started feeling some pain even though I had the epidural, I was having some pain. So the way that the epidural works is there's like a catheter in your back, and then it's connected to the medication. But there's a little button that you can push, and when you push it, it gives you a little bit more of the medication to help relieve pain. And so around 3:30, I was feeling a little more pain, and it was tolerable, but I didn't know if it was going to keep getting worse and get to the point where it was before. So I just pushed the button, and then right away I was feeling fine again. And like at around 7, I started feeling that pain that I was feeling at like 3:30. So I pushed the button again, and like a minute later the nurse came in because they were going to change their shifts, and then the doctor wanted to check me. And as soon as they checked me, they're like, oh, she's 10 centimeters, 100% effaced, like she's ready to go, the baby's right there. So they were rushing, trying to get everything ready, and they were calling the doctors in because they're saying the baby was going to come out. And the doctor came in, and they put my legs up in the stirrups. And so that's when they saw that I was ready, and everything happened so quickly. Like literally they came in to check me like a little after 7, and my baby was born at 7:24. While I gave birth to her, like I couldn't really feel anything, so I didn't even know if I was pushing right, but they're like, yeah, you don't seem like you're a first-time mom, you're pushing really well. And then the baby came out, but then I did tear. I had a 3rd-degree tear, and so when she came out, I was bleeding. They said I had a little arterial bleed, so they were trying to stop the bleeding. It took them a little over an hour for them to stop the bleeding and sew me back up, and so that wasn't fun. And then since I was bleeding, they needed to hold pressure. So what they did was they like packed my entire vagina full of like gauze, but it was like non-adhesive. They didn't use a non-adhesive gauze, they used just regular gauze, so they packed everything in there. And then they took out my epidural, so all that was gone. And then maybe like within the hour, maybe 2 hours, I had all my feeling back. But since I had such a bad tear, they had to keep a catheter in me because they didn't want me getting up or anything while the gauze was still in there. And so maybe about 12 hours later, so they took me to postpartum after, so I can stay there with my husband and my baby. And about 12 hours after they had put the packing in, they had to remove it. And that was the most painful part of the entire thing. Since they put the packing in and they didn't use a non-adhesive gauze, whatever started to heal, like, just got ripped out. So they ripped whatever was on that gauze out, and then that's when I started bleeding again. But it was fine. It was just once the packing was out, I felt better. It was still very painful, but I felt better than when everything was still inside there. So we were in the hospital. So Friday we went in, we had her Saturday morning, and then we had to stay till Sunday. When we had her, they checked her jaundice level through the little thing on the forehead, through the skin, and her level was like an 8, and they said anything like 7 or higher, they have to do blood work just to make sure that she's okay. And so they did all her testing, and her jaundice level, I forgot what it came back. It was a little bit high, but it wasn't high enough where that she needed to get treatment or needed to stay in the hospital. So they discharged us on Sunday, and we had her first doctor's appointment on Monday. So we took her to the doctor, and they did another jaundice test where they checked her through her forehead, and they said it was a little high, so they wanted us to go to the lab and get her blood work. And we got her blood work, and it came back kind of high. It was either 13 or 15, and the doctor had said if it was like 17 or higher, then she needed to go into the hospital. And so it was high, but not high enough where she needed to go into the hospital, but he wanted more blood work the next day, because I guess with jaundice levels it peaks at day 5. So the next day on Tuesday, we took her again to get her blood work, and that time it came back at like 17 or 18. So he's like, no, she needs to go to the hospital. And so my poor little baby had to go into the hospital on Tuesday night. She was in NICU to get the lights. She had the lights underneath her, and she had the lights on top. I have a cool spa looking picture of her. I'll insert that here. And so she was in there Tuesday night, and they were poking her. They were getting urine from her, blood, everything. It was not fun. So she was there from Tuesday until Thursday afternoon. We were able to take her home. So Tuesday night I was not able to hold her at all, because he said she needed the lights and she couldn't be removed because her levels got up to like 19 point something. And they say that once it hits 20 or above 20, then they can start getting like their blindness, deafness, problems with their brain. So I was like, okay, like keep her under the lights, like the sooner we can get it down the better. And so then they kept her in the lights, and I couldn't hold her that Tuesday. And then we're not allowed to sleep there. So in NICU, a parent can't sleep there. You can stay there, but if you start getting sleepy, then they ask you to go home. So we stayed there probably till about midnight that first night. And so then my husband and I, we decided to go home, so that way we can come back the next morning, early in the morning, and then be there with her all day. So the next day we got there, I want to say like around 8. So we were with her all day, and I was able to actually carry her then, because she didn't need the top lights anymore. They had top lights on her, and then they had lights like on this blanket that went underneath her. So when we got back in the morning, she didn't need the top lights anymore, but she still needed the blanket underneath her with the lights. But you can move that blanket out from the crib that she was in. So I was able to hold her that day. Also, I was breastfeeding, but the day that she went into the hospital was the day that my milk came in. So when we got into the hospital, she needed to eat, and I had never pumped, so they needed to give her formula that day to help her poop it out, because with the jaundice, when she poops, it helps get rid of the bilirubin. But since she had some formula through one of their bottles, she was refusing the breast. So since I kept trying to breastfeed her and she kept refusing it, she just wanted the bottle. They said because she didn't have to work as hard to get the milk out. And so then I I was super upset about it because I was like, okay, so when I go home, I'm not gonna be able to breastfeed her. She's gonna need the bottle. Like, I have no formula. I have nothing for her. So I had just been pumping. So the whole time that she was in the hospital, they have like a pump room. So I'd go there like every 2 to 3 hours. I'd be pumping as much as I can. So that way they would give her my breast milk instead of formula. So I thought, even if she won't take my breast, at least I can give her the milk. So I was able to do that. And then luckily the day, I'll make a video about my breastfeeding journey, because that was a big one too. But then the day that we got home from the hospital, she went back on the breast, and luckily I didn't have to give her any more formula. But yeah, so that was the story of how she was born. She's asleep now. But I will make more videos. So until the next one, bye.